I always feel so unprepared when you hear Fatty typing for like 12 to 13 minutes and we're on pre-podcast. He's like,
Well, hey everyone, and welcome back to Beyond the Controller. I'm Gladys, and with me as always is Cryptic Panther
"Hey, everybody."
and Fatty.
Uh,
I feel that in my bones. Yes. Uber's not going to be able to make it with us tonight, so he'll be taking care of as much news as we can possibly handle. And holy shit, there's a lot of it. We got a ton of things ready, and let's roll right into it. Probably one of the biggest, most surprising recent developments here. Panther, what's going on with Sony?
They not coming to E3.
But
What
why?
the fuck?
Big Daddy Sony sitting it out? Man.
I seen this news yesterday and I was, no way. Come on. This has got to be, like some type of a typo. No, they are like, nah, we don't need to go. We're staying home. I'm like, wow. I was surprised, as was, I think, everybody else in the gaming world. I think Phil Spencer's probably still dancing because he probably figured we got E3 won this time. There's no way we can get beat by Ubisoft.
I mean, that's not true either, but
No,
maybe he's thinking that, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, there's been no major statement from Sony on this and stating why. I mean, there's two articles I'm going to link. One of them has a quote from PlayStation's Senior Vice President of Communications, Jennifer Clark. She said, "We will not active. I don't know why it says active. Will not activate or hold a press conference around E3. So they're not pulling like the EA Play deal where they're gonna like 2 or 3 days before. They're not gonna stick up a tent and have a PlayStation event like a day or two before E3. So they're having no presence at E3 at all. They're not having a booth. They're not having anything on the show floor. They're not showing up at all. So this is crazy. I mean, I was blown away, and I mean, I was at work when I heard this news, and I was hoping to get all this on last night to talk about this. I was like revved right up. I was like, couldn't believe it. I just kept trying to read more articles. I was trying to look for fucking quotes from like Sean Layden and to see like, hey, is there what's going on? Why are you doing this? I watched a couple other videos of people talking about it. Read a lot of comments on Reddit. Yeah, I be honest, I was a little hurt that they're not going to be at E3. Is that wrong? Like E3 is a big thing for me every year. I've been watching E3 for a long time, even before I've been doing the podcast. I've been following a lot of E3 stuff, and I was like, I couldn't believe it. In 24-year history, PlayStation's like, nah, we don't need you. So I was blown away, and I mean, like, a lot of speculation's got to come out of this.
Sure.
I mean,
yeah.
they canceled PSX this year in December, which they said that they didn't have a lot of new titles to show off because they've been showing some of the titles for the last 2 or 3 press conference things. Like the last couple of years, they've been showing the God of War, they've been showing Spider-Man, they've been showing Days Gone, they've been Last of Us 2, like
Death Stranding.
And I can't remember the Ghost of Tsushima, if I'm saying that correctly.
Yeah.
And like those games, and they're like, okay, we got all these games coming, no release dates in 90% of them. So why, excuse me, why are they going to come out at PSX, show you the same stuff again? Just people are going to get bored of it. People don't want to see any of this crap. So I was like, okay, I understand that. I mean, it sucks because they always had stage interviews. They always had developers and like some of the actors from some of the games, and I like that part of it. I mean, I don't always have to see trailers. I don't always have to see game announcements. Hearing the developers talk about working on games and listen to the voice actors and motion capture stuff, that interests me. I don't know anybody else, but I could watch that like all the time. I love that stuff. Sure. So I was like, okay, PSX, whatever. I guess I'll I don't have to worry about it. I'll not no tears shed on that one. But then with them pulling out of E3, I was floored. I was speechless for a few minutes when I was reading the article. I couldn't believe it. So Variety, I think, broke the news in yesterday afternoon, and I watch the Kind of Funny Games cast, and they found out about this during their live episode on Twitch, and they were reacting to it live, and they were blown away. They couldn't believe it either. So, yeah, this just dropped out of nowhere. Like there was no foreshadowing. There was no. I didn't see any rumors. I hadn't heard anyone talk about anything. So, my question is what are they doing in 2019 if they're not going to be showing up at E3?
Swinging for the fences. Absolutely. I think right now the only play for Sony with doing this and pulling out of PSX and E3 is that they are holding their cards real close to their chest right now. We absolutely will see a huge announcement at some point here in the future, probably before late 2019, I'm sure. But I think we can absolutely expect the announcement of the PlayStation 5 and probably a handful of titles that have been worked on in secret over the last couple years. I think that they're preparing those. And right now, we're looking at a Sony that has been, or is, I think, the most confident that it has been in at least a decade. With the PS4 reaching such phenomenal success worldwide, they've obviously got the majority market share. They're turning a profit. They're doing incredible for their business and their brand right now, and really haven't made too many mistakes. Right now, them pulling out of PSX and E3 to me doesn't resonate as far as making sense, like with them not having titles to show, or they don't want to show the same titles. I don't believe that for a minute. I think right now the unspoken part of that is they don't have any titles to show right now. They're not willing to show them, but there are absolutely titles, I'm convinced, and that there's going to be a big unveiling and probably maybe even the PlayStation 5 lineup launch. I think that's what it's going to be. And I think they don't want to deliver it in piecemeal. They want to hit us with one giant presentation to show all that and break the internet, because that's how things go now. And yeah, I think this is a confident retreat for them to where they're going to try to blow us away. And I can't wait to see it. Fatti, what do you think?
I'll be the outlier here.
Sure.
I don't care about this news. I didn't give a fuck when they announced this. Like, I don't care. I think Sony pulling out of E3 is a sign of what E3 has become. We all know E3 is dying. It's getting smaller by the year. I also think that this is Sony saying they're not going to waste their time anymore with E3 press conferences because, and you guys might not agree, but the last 2 to 3 have fucking sucked. Other than being literal movies to watch with a minor stage performance, there has been pretty much nothing substantial at an E3 press conference for Sony in the last couple of years other than trailers. I mean, there's no one coming out and talking about shit. There's no one showing anything off. It's just come sit in this room and watch this trailer, which you could easily do at home in the comfort of your own office, bed, whatever you do to watch videos. And I think Sony's realizing that maybe it's not worth spending all this money on conferences if you're not going to do a conference right. And they could probably break away from that and be just as good as they are in the market right now without having to pander into E3. That's what I think the mindset is. Obviously, there's going to be some announcements coming up. They're going to do it their own way, but I just think they're tired of E3. And I think this is possibly what we're going to see in the future is more companies just backing off. You know, they're not seeing the returns they want to see from E3. And as someone who has been a gamer and paid attention to gaming news a lot throughout his life, E3 is falling, and it's going to fall hard eventually.
Fair enough.
So you figure that eventually a lot of the companies are going to start running their own yearly events? You figure that's going to be the norm? And
no, I don't even think it'll be that. I think it'll be like Nintendo, where they just have their directs, right? They release a video online, and it's all of the news. I mean, Nintendo's been doing it. Square Enix did it last year. It was literally just a huge video. Like I said, Sony did it last year, other than the little weird performances they did the year before in that theater. I think that's going to become the norm, is they're going to release their own production, I guess. and it'll probably just be thrown online for everyone to sort of engage in at the same time. I don't think E3 or other big conferences are really giving them the returns that they were looking for, or the returns that they got, I mean, even 5 years ago. So I think they're kind of just turning the tide and saying, maybe this isn't necessary. We can probably do this our own way and still be as successful.
And that does make a certain amount of sense. The world we live in today, you could rock the world with, pulling up Twitter and just shooting out a couple characters, PlayStation 5 tomorrow, and
exactly. And think of it this way. I mean, for the longest time, E3 was not open to the public.
Yeah.
As of the last couple of years, it's been open to the public because less people are putting money in E3. And even now that it's open to the public, in the last couple of years, attendance has dropped. So if you're a company spending probably hundreds of thousands, if not millions, on a conference to hold each year at this conference, and it's not giving you the returns or the audience that you've been getting before, I mean, it makes sense to just sort of cut ties and figure out how to go about yourself without them.
Well, now I'm convinced, and now I don't think Sony has a big announcement. Thanks, man.
No problem. I'm not gonna shit on your hopes and dreams.
No, they fucking do. Sony's got something. I mean, they seen that Microsoft last year come out, and they made the statements about how they're working on next generation already and blah blah blah, and Sony's going, okay, you beat us last time. We came out with the PlayStation 4. We thumped you. Your Xbox One didn't do as well as you'd hoped. The PS4 Pro launched, and then all of a sudden, what was it, almost a year to the day type of deal, they launched the Xbox One X for a little more than a year, and it's a more powerful console. And I mean, I'm not knocking Microsoft for that. I mean, the Xbox One X is a more powerful console. It's also a year newer. It should be more powerful. So is Sony, and to my mind, they're like, well, we made the mistake last time of launching our console split, or our upgraded console a year early. So are they holding back to see what Microsoft's going to do at E3? Is this now changed Microsoft's play for E3? I mean,
that's a good question as well.
These guys, E3 is huge for these companies, and they imagine they plan these probably the day after E3's down. They're probably planning next year's. Okay, the stage didn't work this well. Let's do the stage this way. We got this announced. We got, they're probably already planning E3. So, how much has this changed Microsoft's outlook on what E3 is for them now?
Well, based on Fatty's reaction and thoughts here, I actually have been pulled to that train of thinking, because that's going to be big now. That what if Xbox and Microsoft come out and reveal something at this year's E3 or next year, and Sony doesn't show up? All Sony's got to do is sit and wait and watch that announcement, and then they can immediately work on something better. It doesn't have to be competitive on the same day like that anymore. When the Xbox One was announced originally, and it was fully online all the time, and all the other features that really people just didn't care for, huge backlash. Sony amended their presentation, and on the spot was throwing digs at Xbox, and the competitive nature of these things as well has always been a factor. So how much is Microsoft going to want to provide details of in the future at these things if they have no idea whatsoever what Sony's doing?
Exactly. So I mean, this is, I mean, yes, I know, and I'll agree with Fatty. Last year's conference was a little better than the year before. I didn't care for this straight up, hi, I'm so and so from Sony, and here's all our trailers. I don't really care for that style of press conference. I prefer, an actual, they come out and they talk about a game, someone maybe does a little live demo, and they, that I don't want to see. I don't want to see a fucking Just Dance fucking intro that Ubisoft does. They could fucking shove that up their ass. But I mean, I prefer that type of a conference. If they're going to come out, I want to see something. I want to hear, devs and people talk about their game. That's what I prefer. And maybe Sony's decided, well, we don't want to drag all our developers to LA, pull them off games, schedule. And they're like, well, that's why we're doing the video presentations. And they realized that maybe people don't like them, and they decided, screw it, let's just stay home. And I mean, just because they're Sony games doesn't mean all the other gaming developers and companies that are presenting cannot show their games. I mean,
Right.
the exclusives, I mean, Ubisoft can show PlayStation titles and Square Enix can show PlayStation titles, and so they're technically not gonna be there, but their games can still be there. So I mean, they're gonna have a presence, quote unquote presence at E3. It's just not gonna be, PlayStation's own floor show or press conference. So
I kind of have to disagree there. I mean, you're saying that Ubisoft can show their own games and stuff. Those aren't going to be exclusives.
no,
So saying that is like saying Xbox is also going to have a preference there. That it just doesn't make sense.
well,
You
how
know,
many
Sony's not going to be there.
right?
Simple.
But games that are playable on PlayStation are going to be there. So I mean,
And
it's
Xbox.
not like right and
So
Xbox, right? I get
But
that.
it defeats the point.
Well,
You can't say that Sony's going to have a presence there because it's not. Sure, Ubisoft can show this game that's going to be playable on Sony, but it's also going to be playable on Xbox or PC or the fucking Switch. It's
right. I'm
they're
not saying that. But I'm saying like that way they don't. How many fucking times did we see Kingdom Hearts fucking trailers last year? Every press conference fucking had one, right?
Yeah.
So I'm saying like I mean a game can be shown on another stage that is going to be on PlayStation. And they have 86 million consoles in the market. Those games are gonna sell to that console no matter who fucking shows them, right? Because when Microsoft does their presser, they don't show exclusive solely.
Right. What Fatty's saying, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, is just that it's not beneficial to Sony for a developer to come up and say, "Hey, this is our game, and it's available on all platforms."
Yeah,
exactly.
It is.
No, it isn't. It isn't at all.
I believe it is.
All right. Okay. You can say that it is. You can say that this is our game. It's playable on all of these platforms. That's not just going to benefit Sony, though. That's still benefiting the other ones as well. So that's creating competition where Sony's not going to be there to back that up.
Oh, I'm not going to say that it's only benefiting Sony. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that just because they're not there directly to show their exclusives doesn't mean that they're still not going to be talked about in other press conferences, right? I mean, there's always that, we're launching this first on PlayStation, we're launching this first on Switch, we're launching this first on Xbox. Oh my kid, they don't launch nothing first on Switch unless it's a Nintendo product. But I mean, that's what I'm saying is there's still gonna be talk of games that are gonna be on PlayStation, and you don't know what Ubisoft could have a fucking deal with Sony to have one of their new games to be available on PlayStation first. Like, we don't know. I'm still saying there's a chance to have a presence as if games are going to be talked about and they're going to be on consoles. I mean, if Ubisoft says this game's on all platforms and people that have a PlayStation are not be like, well, Sony wasn't there, fuck them, I'm not buying the game. They're still going to get repped. They're just not going to have their own press conference, which I don't think is going to hurt them in the long run. But like I said, this is big news. I was honestly, I was floored. I didn't see it coming.
Any rebuttal, Fatty?
No.
All right. Well, let's move on. We spent way too much fucking time talking about this. Fatty, big news out of the Xbox camp, but not unexpected news. What's going on with them now?
Well, they said they're going to be at E3. There's a rumor about that, is that they're possibly building a new console for next year, but it's not the next generation of Xbox. And so this might tie in with our expectation of Sony as well, because this could kind of sway things either left or right. The rumor from sources who are familiar with Microsoft's hardware plans for next year are saying that Microsoft is looking to build an Xbox One upgrade without a disk drive. So it'll be a console that's completely diskless. You won't have to enter disks into it. It'll just be the console full of digital downloads.
Yeah.
They're rumored to be releasing this, or at least announcing it at E3 next year. But people are speculating that it could be released as soon as fall or Christmas season of 2019. So basically what will happen is, the rumor is that the console will be a refresh for the Xbox One without a disc port, which will allow it to lower prices for people who want to enter the Xbox environment. Right now, the cost of that sits at about $299 for an entry level Xbox. The rumor is that they're looking to bring that down to under $200 to possibly even $100. Now, it really depends on if they're only going to do one version of this console, or if they're going to do, say, an underpowered version of this console, and then like the Xbox One S, which is slightly more powerful, but still without the disk drive. It's kind of unforeseen at this point right now. Now, when I was reading this article, I got kind of nervous because I have a pretty decently large collection of Xbox One games. So if I were to go out and buy this new Xbox One without a disk drive, what am I supposed to do with those games? Now, how it's speculated right now is that they'll also be releasing a program that will allow you to trade in your discs at participating retailers such as the Microsoft Store, or, with me being in Canada, I hope at a Best Buy or something, because we don't have Microsoft stores anywhere near me. That'll allow you to trade your disc in for a digital code. Now, I don't know how much I believe that, because that might be kind of cost intensive, but they might be able to resell those discs. It's hard to say. So they're looking at possibly announcing this at next year's E3. And well, Microsoft, they've briefly talked about the next generation of Xbox. Obviously, this isn't it. This isn't part of their Scarlet family of devices, as they called them. Those are still speculated to be talked about next year, but more of a release for 2020 for those. So it looks like they will be doing some hardware stuff in next year E3, but not quite as groundbreaking as one thought. What do you guys think about a discless console?
I think it's inevitable. I absolutely think that we're going to see it sooner than later. It was just a matter of who was going to do it first. And there was even speculation we talked about a while ago with certain consoles, going digital only. I believe the Xbox was one of the rumored ones,
that was the Scarlet family.
Yeah. So, I mean, it makes sense. Everything is going digital, and I think when they originally announced the Xbox One, as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, their purpose of having it all digital, completely online, connected at all times and all that stuff, was kind of a step one towards the all digital phase. I think they just tried it too early. But right now, everybody's got internet. Broadband is the standard. Most people have streaming capability, and most people subscribe to, Netflix, streaming services, whatever. These are incredibly common, and the core of entertainment now is streaming for a lot of people. So the idea of streaming games or just downloading them digitally, it fits right in with where we are in 2018 going into 2019. I don't disagree with this move, just as long as it can be supported. And one of my questions was going to be, and you kind of answered it, at least the speculation did, was what are we going to do about the physical discs? I also would love to see an answer on the question, which we've been asking for the last 20 years, is why are digital downloads the same price as physical discs?
Yes,
Exactly.
That doesn't make any fucking sense.
That needs to change, especially if that's how we're going to go. There's no reason, when you take out manufacturing costs and merchandising and the cuts that the stores that sell them have to get and all that stuff, you take out all those costs, I think the max price we should be seeing for games digital right now should be $49.99 instead of $59.99.
Well, I have an example for you. A couple days ago, Wednesday, Fallout 76 came out.
Yeah.
I purchased the physical copy, the deluxe edition. It was like $109. And I physically purchased it, went into the game store, picked up the case, bought it. There's not a single fucking disc in there. It came with a download code.
Oh.
And I paid $109 for that.
Wow.
For not a disc and a few downloadable items.
There was a rumor that the actual physical disc that you did buy had hardly any data and had to download most of the content anyways. There was like a 50 gig patch or something or whatever. And I'm thinking, what's the point of a physical disc anymore?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, Xbox has been doing this for a little while already. They've been moving towards this. PUBG, when it came for Xbox, didn't come with a disc. Any physical copies you bought, it was a digital download. But it was still the same price as most disc games. I think it was a little cheaper. It was like $49. Same with Cuphead. didn't come with a disc. It was a digital download code in a case. So they've definitely been moving towards this. But I agree with the price, man. It's got to come down. There's no reason we're paying physical copy prices for codes.
And,
it's just
and it shouldn't have been an equal price to begin with.
No,
you know, it's easier for them to do digital, and it's cheaper for them to do digital, but they're making the same amount of even more profit from doing it. And right now, you know, I absolutely think that game developers should be paid for the work that they do. You know, everything. I'm not, you know, begrudging them a profit. I'm absolutely not. However, the value needs to be there as well, and we can tell obviously when there's nothing physical versus when there is. You know, those two things are different. It's not the exact same thing. So why is it the exact same price? We've been asking this for a long time. I mean, pretty much since we've been able to download games at all. They've always have been the same price. But yeah, man, I would love to see it. That'd be, I think, one of the biggest current generation of gaming questions that could be answered, or a positive step for gamers.
Well, I'd
love to see it happen.
The reason why the digital games are the same price is the brick and mortar stores would be pissed off if they were selling them cheaper, because then they'll get less sales. Because you know yourself, if you were sitting there faced with the choice of buying a physical copy at $59 or digital at $49, you're gonna pay $10 less to get it, because you know when you go to resell a game, you might get $10-15 for a used game if you're lucky most times. So there's the money that you're gonna save. Fucking have it digital so I can play it whenever and no more discs to worry about. But my question is, why aren't brick and mortar stores selling? I know, and I think in the States they do, but I don't think they do here, where you can go into a store and buy a digital code off the shelf.
Yeah, you can. Best Buy does.
Best Buy does here? Okay, I didn't know that. So
GameStop does here. I'm sure that they should up there.
Well, I don't know about EB Games. I don't shop EB Games too often. I buy my stuff usually Walmart or Amazon, because I don't have a Best Buy here, and Best Buy can suck my ass anyways.
I know Walmart here sells digital codes.
Okay.
Also,
well, they don't here in Canada. Well, I don't know if they don't. Not here where I live, anyways. I've never seen a digital code. Fuck the Walmart where I live don't even fucking do pre-orders anymore. You have to do them all online. They used to have a pre-order section where you could pre-order games like in the store, pay $10, and the game committee were guaranteed it, and the whole works. Not anymore. Yep. I'm like, that's stupid. But yeah, I mean, that's why the brick and mortar stores get pissed off for not being able to sell physical copies, because of digital sales. But if they pushed digital codes in stores, because not everyone wants to go online and put a credit card in. Not everyone has a credit card. No one wants to tie a PayPal account to like.
Well, and you can't pay cash.
Right. So if you go to a brick and mortar store, you can pay cash for a digital code and take it home. So that's what they should be doing, and the stores are still going to make money off those.
The thing is, though, is like those stores, even the stores right now that are selling digital codes like Best Buy and whatever else doesn't, they're still charging the same price as if you were buying a disc.
I know. That's why I'm saying there's got to be that gap, and that needs to happen. I mean, if they're going to start switching to a digital only, then yeah. But I mean, here my question is: are they going to do this for the Xbox One X? Are they making a discless Xbox One X?
I don't think so. No. The only reason I don't think so is for 4K discs right now.
Yeah, and I also don't think so, just because they're going to release this updated Xbox One. It's just sort of a last attempt to get some people on their side of the market before they release the next generation. And this move will kind of decide whether or not that next generation is going to have discs or not.
And here's a point: if someone listening is going to think about getting into buying this cheaper version of an Xbox, here's a piece of advice for you. If you find out beforehand this disc to digital program is going to be in your area, start checking your fucking local shops and like online, like your Craigslist and all that shit, for people selling cheap ass fucking Xbox games you want, because once you have the disc, you can trade in for a digital code.
Oh yeah, exactly.
So you can build a library of fairly new games at a big discount. So you walk into the Microsoft store. I got Gears of War 4 or whatever. Boom, here's the digital code. Go home. You got a digital copy. You don't have a fucking used disc anymore. So I mean, I don't know how and who's going to eat the back end of that disc to digital program either. Are they going to resell the discs?
Well, it's hard to say, right? Like, what happens if you walk in with a disc that is just covered in dirt and scratches and like mayonnaise from your sandwich 2 weeks ago. Are they going to accept that, or
are they going to put it in and make sure it plays before they give you a code? And yeah.
And then are they going to try to resell that or just recycle it? Like, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
We're missing a lot of information we need.
Yes.
Honestly.
Yeah. So hopefully there's going to be some more, and there's going to be a follow up to this.
Yeah, hopefully. But that's potentially pretty huge. That could be, you know, the new direction of the market, and Microsoft the first ones to take that step. We don't know. Like I said, you know, first responding to it, I think it's inevitable. I accept it. It needs to be handled correctly.
I agree.
That's it. We need to have a graceful transition here, and graceful for the consumers. Not what's easiest for the manufacturers or the brick and mortar stores. In game development and in game consumption, the last thing on my mind is how well is GameStop going to do? I don't care. I mean, they're a business that makes money off of us, but if it's directly a digital download from the developers or from the publishers to, you know, my couch, I'm cutting out the middleman, and GameStop is going to end up going under, and so are all the other brick and mortar stores, unless they're selling, you know, just the antique games, obviously before the digital era. I think there'll always be a market for that, at least for the next 20, 30 years. You know, if we went all digital today, I think we'd still have brick and mortar stores for the next couple decades.
Yeah, I think so.
So I don't think they've got anything to worry about coming up shortly. And again, if they can handle it correctly, they've got even less to worry about. All right, let's move on here. This is kind of a topic that we come back to every few weeks. Nobody can seem to just keep a fucking straight face here. The developers or publishers, people in the gaming community, there's always something going on with loot crates, with loot boxes, online gambling. We see these articles all the time. We talk about these articles all the time. And usually somebody slips up at some point or another. And this time it was somebody from Ubisoft's support staff. And they chimed in something that presumably they thought would help ease the conversation, or maybe see them as more personable. But a Steam user named Uberyoutuber had said in a conversation about loot crates and loot boxes, he said, quote, "I do appreciate why players feel the way they do about them," in parentheses here, "not a huge fan myself. However, as it was also pointed out, you can always just not buy them." Later on, he says, "If players simply didn't buy these crates, they would not be added into games in future." He said later on again that loot crates / cosmetic items in general have been a huge boon for the gaming industry, being a driving factor in the increased popularity of gaming over the past decade or so. They aren't a bad thing if done right. End quote. It's hard to say that this is an unexpected response, especially from somebody speaking on behalf of a developer. But I feel like at this point we should know better than to say things like this. While he's not technically wrong, he is absolutely correct in one aspect, at least, that they have been a huge boon for the gaming industry. Obviously, you know, we've seen and talked about how many billions of dollars are being put into Madden and FIFA, and I'm sure Fortnite as well. All these huge successful games and even franchises are now being built upon loot boxes and cosmetic items, and just about every game has them now. They are all over the place, and the reason they are is exactly right. They do make a lot of money. It's a whole nother way for games to make money after the fact of buying the game. And for some games, even the majority of sales that they make isn't from the retail value of the game itself. It's from loot box and cosmetic purchases. So he is correct in stating that. It's an ugly truth, and one that we're dealing with in different ways. I just don't think that they should be pointing out with kind of a ho-hum like, you know, well, it's what we have and it's what sells, so we're going to do it. And this should be expected now. I mean, there's legislation that we've talked about and covered from Belgium, from Australia. There's been talk of legislation here in the U.S. Loot boxes and stuff like that are the real ugly thing that we're looking at under the magnifying glass right now. Cosmetic items, not so much. And I think most players agree, and I think all of us here agree pretty much if it's cosmetic, we don't give a shit. We absolutely can, as he pointed out, just not buy them. In most games, they don't really alter the experience that much. It's just a way for people to personalize themselves or their characters. But it's just kind of a, I don't know, almost a not quite superior speaking like way from him, but just, I don't know. It just rubs the wrong way for me, at least, and for everybody else that was involved in this discussion as well. One user also calling them greedy assholes. But no real new developments here. Just a support staff for Ubisoft, just kind of saying one thing that's, while true, it's also kind of an ugly truth. And players don't seem to appreciate that in that conversation. I don't really appreciate it. Do you guys think that we're past the point of being outraged by stuff like this? Is this just the norm? Any thoughts on this?
I think people need to stop being so fucking sensitive.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe I full-heartedly agree with this quote, that if players didn't buy them, they wouldn't be added into the games. And I don't think that he needs to sugarcoat that. You know, sometimes we need to take the ugly truths head on, and this is just a very, very truthful statement, you know? And if people are getting offended by him saying that, I mean, that's the reality of it, you know? If we didn't dump so much money into these things, they probably wouldn't be here, you know? And I don't think that there is a reason why he needs to tiptoe around that. It just, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way. I'm just, the only thing I'm unhappy about is that is the truth.
Yeah,
I don't like
exactly.
So I don't know. There's not really too much more to say about it. Yeah, just laying it out there as it is. And I don't know, until either more legislation is passed or people stop spending money on them. Yeah, that's how it's going to stay. Panther, any thoughts before we move on?
I agree that this guy's just speaking the truth. And gamers are as much to blame as the developers and publishers who put them in the game.
That's right.
You know, I mean, it's you know, there's no way around it. I mean, this is a battle long lost. You know, you know. I mean, it's the dead horse that just keeps getting beat with a stick. You know, week in,
Exactly.
week out, day in, day out. Sometimes it, you know, I mean, it just can't get it out of the news. And I mean, like I said, the millions, if not billions of dollars that are spent on some of the sports games just make me fucking almost physically ill that people are that fucking stupid.
Well, I mean, like even our colleague Uber, how much did he spend on EA games before, and now on
thousands,
Fortnite?
yeah.
Exactly.
NBA Live and all that. Yeah, those packs. He done pack openings constantly, and it's like, man,
Yep.
like, yeah, a couple $100 in on Madden or 2000. I can't remember now the number. It almost made. I almost like just totally beat him at Mike and left the room when he mentioned how much he spent. It's like, wow. I'm like, here I am waiting for E3 sales so we'll be able to pre-order games on the cheap, and he's just dropping like bags of money into packs. It's like, it's sad. But yeah, and I mean, it becomes an addiction. I mean, that's the problem. But yeah, users are definitely to blame for this as well. It's not just the developers. I mean, they started it, but they're feeding it. So,
well, and it's the supply and demand of it. You know, it's that if they were introduced and nobody bought them, the developer is absolutely right saying that they wouldn't be here. But they caught on. Developers noticed how much they could make, and god damn, did they take advantage of it.
I think we should just make a game called Lootbox / microtransactions and sell the fucking thing. And then all the game is just loot boxes. You buy stuff to own stuff digitally. That's all you fucking do. And we can all retire and buy each buy our own island.
There's one for sale in New Brunswick right now. Under $1 million.
I ain't fucking staying here if I get that kind of money.
Exactly. Remember Seattle.
Yeah,
Boys.
Seattle's the place.
That's where it's
all
at.
All right.
I think that's about the midway point between us, huh?
We can make it work.
All right. Well, let's move on here. We've actually got two separate articles that kind of hit the same thing here, but Panther, what is Nintendo doing?
Nintendo are being a bunch of fucking dicks. They're fucking bullies. They're a bunch of money grubbing fucking whores. and they need to just drown in a fucking vat of toxic waste.
I'm gonna take a guess here that Fatty, you probably actually agree with this move. Do you?
I gotta open this article because I think we're looking at different things. Do I agree with them winning? I'm not gonna spoil it because Panther still needs to explain. No, I don't agree with them winning. Fuck that.
Okay. All right, Panther,
That's
go on.
terrible.
The owners of
I'll tell you why later.
Yeah, the owners of the now defunct ROM sites LoveRoms.com and LoveRetro.co have agreed to a $12 million judgment in favor of Nintendo. The operators, a married couple, admit to both direct and indirect copyright trademark infringement. Both parties requested the court to sign off on this unusual judgment, which will end their legal battle. This summer, Nintendo made it totally clear that websites offering access to its retro games and ROMs will not be tolerated. The Japanese game developer filed a complaint at a federal court in Arizona, accusing those mentioned above sites of massive copyright and trademark infringement. Faced with millions of dollars of potential damages, the operator of the sites, Jacob Mathis, and swiftly took the platforms offline. The legal action also led to the shutdown of several other ROM sites who feared they could be next. Man, like, fuck you, Nintendo. This is just a way for them to restrict access. And I mean, not every ROM would have been a fucking Nintendo game, right? Not every ROM is a Nintendo copyrighted, owned individual piece of fucking, media. So they're forcing these sites to close along with some other unmentioned ones that, because of fear of Nintendo, they're basically these games that people who want to, make their own retro consoles, now don't have access to these titles. I mean, on those particular sites, I mean, Nintendo ain't listening to this fucking podcast because, they don't like me because I don't like them. So yeah, I mean, there's other sites to get this content, but it just, man, like $12 million, you had to sue these fucking people till they pull their sites down. And like, Nintendo doesn't need $12 million. They just made it hurt hard enough that they know that these people have no other fucking choice but to fold.
Well, and it's a deterrent as well.
And I mean, for them to like the torrent battle's been going on since the day torrents were invented. And I mean, I'm not above board. I'm not gonna fucking sit here and lie. I'm not gonna say I've never downloaded a game, or a movie, or music. I mean, tell me fucking who hasn't. In their time of the world of torrents and everything else, that people haven't downloaded something that they didn't want to pay for. But Nintendo,
you're the guy in those commercials.
Yeah,
you know that, right? You wouldn't steal a car.
All right, I've downloaded 2 cars. I'm not gonna lie. I've downloaded 2 of them. If 3D printer technology would catch up, I'm gonna have 2 new cars. But I mean, like, I get them not like, I get the whole copyright thing. I get that. But these old ROMs, man, how else are people going to get access to these? Oh, yeah, guess what? Buy a fucking goddamn retro console that Nintendo sells for $100 with 20 fucking games on it. You can't upgrade, you can't add to, and you can't plug in online to access a game store. Oh, you want to play these old games? Guess what? You got to buy a fucking $400 Nintendo Switch. And then subscribe to their fucking service, then you have access to retro games that you have to pay for yet again. So they just were scared that their storefront wouldn't make money, so they sued these poor people into oblivion, which is bullshit.
Yeah. Now let me dig into my guess here, Fatty. I hope you didn't take offense, because what I was actually attempting to do is compliment you. The reason that I thought that you would agree with this ruling, and I'm not saying that you'd be happy about it, but the reason I thought that you would agree with this ruling is because I think out of all of us in the podcast, and not just here tonight, but including Uber and sometimes contributor doing work, I think you're probably the most objective person that we have in the way that you think about things. I think not taking a personal view here, what we're seeing is Nintendo taking control of its creative properties, which they're entitled to do. It's their business. Now, as Panther pointed out, not everything on the site was Nintendo owned, but as just kind of a sledgehammer onto a caterpillar, you know, they really really
Wow,
really did overkill.
that's an analogy, a sledgehammer to a
Well,
caterpillar. I
and
like it.
that's the $12 million judgment.
Yeah.
But it's a deterrent to other ROM users and anybody trying to make emulators and all that stuff, because it is their property. And that's the only reason, and I hope you understand now after explaining it, that I feel like a business is entitled to their properties. Now, whether or not we have access to them anymore as consumers, that's irrelevant, because this company owns what they made. And if they choose not to give us access to it, if we don't have a way to download these digitally or whatever, sure, that's going to feel unfair for us gamers. However, it's entirely within their rights because it's their intellectual property.
Oh, and like I said, I get that. Like I said, this whole, the copyright thing, the torrent thing, like this has been a battle. There's been millions of lawsuits. There's been probably billions of dollars won and lost in this fight that's been going on for how long? 15
Right.
years? Whatever. It's how long the torrent battle's been going on between everybody. But the thing that, like I said, that pisses me off is they singled out these two sites and they went after them. And I could see them saying, all right, you got to get rid of anything that's Nintendo, and fine. But they sued them to shut them down completely. So anything that's not Nintendo now is gone. That's my point. And I mean, yes, Nintendo has a right to their own content. Yes, Nintendo, it's licensed to them, the copyright, etc., etc. I understand that. But for them to come in and steamroll these, sledgehammer to a caterpillar to basically to force them and other places to shut down, that pulls anything that was not Nintendo out of the site, that other companies don't give a shit whether people are downloading their stuff or haven't really thought about fighting them. And the only reason Nintendo's doing this right now is because they're now going to turn around and sell and make a marketplace. That's why they're doing this. Why did they do this 5 years ago? ROMs have been around for a long time. Retro games have been around for a long time. Why are they just doing this?
I think it's
why are they just swinging now? Like, this is
the
my point.
the clear answer for me is because they've reached enormous levels of success with retro consoles. Not only do they see that there's a market and that there's money to be made,
Sadly.
but by cornering the market and erasing any means of people to play these other than new official sources that make money for this company, what they've done is said, okay, we recognize these games actually have value still that we can milk. These games that are 20, 30 years old, even if we throw together a retro console, or if they finally wisen up and they create a digital library that we can download and rent from, then right there, they've turned unofficial ROM sources that are basically just providing copyright infringement on these properties. What they've done is turned that back into a profit and recycled and resold all this stuff that nobody would have ever really guessed would be a thing. I mean, would any of us have guessed 20 years ago that super old games like that, like the 8-bit,
even 5 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible, actually, the kind of resurgence of those things that we've seen based on the success of the retro consoles. And now retro consoles are a dime a dozen. They're all over the place.
But Nintendo has always been that company that is, this is a little bit off topic, but it's another thing. Like, if you want to stream and if you want to put a Nintendo game on YouTube and monetize it, you have to give them 90% of the profit if you make any money.
Right.
Like, no other game company does that. Every other game company is happy for people to stream and to upload YouTube videos because that's exposure for them. Nintendo are such fucking, I don't know if it's at a touch, whether they basically they look through dollar sign, instead of rose colored glasses, it's dollar sign shaped glasses, and the only thing they see is profit. But no one seems to see this, and they just keep sucking on that Nintendo cock like it's fucking spitting gold. It makes me sick. Like, just the people bitch at PS4 fanboys, Nintendo fanboys are fucking worse. They will defend Nintendo till they fucking have bankrupt themselves and be happy about it. It's sad. I mean, people shit on the PlayStation fanboys, man, but Nintendo fanboys are worse.
Maybe. Fatti, having offered an explanation to you on that first remark here, where do you stand on this?
All right, so I'm gonna contradict Panther right now and say I'm a Nintendo fanboy and I'm about to tear them a new asshole.
I shouldn't say. I guess I shouldn't say all Nintendo fanboys. I used to be a Nintendo fanboy, and I've said that before. Not all. I shouldn't put pigeonhole everybody into that group. Sorry, I apologize.
I can understand, Baker, why you think I'd agree with this. Like you said, they have full legal right to do this. These are their copyrights, right? They own this intellectual property, so they can do whatever the fuck they want with it. No one can stop them. The reason I disagree with this is when this first came through and the lawsuit was posted, Love ROMs and Love Retro, they shut down immediately. They said, okay, well, we get it. They took the whole service down. And these are websites that are not making money off those ROMs. They're making money off of advertising, probably Google AdSense, which means they're not making a whole lot of money. So even though Nintendo has full legal right to do this, I think they sort of have a moral obligation to fuck off once they shut it down. There was no reason to continue and then sue these people for $12 million after the fact. They could have said, okay, you've taken them down, let's settle it. Even maybe $100,000 lawsuit would have been fine. Nintendo doesn't need this money, and I can guarantee these people probably don't have that much money. And if they do, it's just barely. I don't see them making a lot from these sites. My second point is this is video game history we're talking about. This is the preservation of games that we might not ever be able to play again. Yes, Nintendo has their retro stores and they're producing more and more remakes of these retros for people to play, but there's games out there that they will never touch again that have strong fan bases that without these ROM sites, they have no way of playing them. A game that comes to my mind is Takeshi's Castle. It was an old Nintendo game from way back when. It was labeled as one of the hardest games in the world. Nintendo will never touch that game because it's not going to make them money. But it has a huge fan base of people who would support any ROM site that put it up there because they love that game. But now these ROM sites are being taken down, that bit of gaming history is gone. You'll never see it on the Nintendo eStore. You'll never see it put into Nintendo Classic because it's not one of those games that people say, oh yeah, that's nostalgic. No, but it still has a huge fan base of people who are losing out now because Nintendo is greedy. They don't need this money, but they still took it. That's what breaks my heart about it. They're destroying history.
That's true. I don't disagree with any of those statements. The only question becomes when it's a shared experience between, a generation of people and it's old games like this that, as you say, we'll never see again because obviously Nintendo's not going to put their whole back catalog on a retro console. They're not going to update their digital library to include all of these things. I don't think that's ever going to happen either. So what we are seeing is the death of a lot of these old retro games. The only question becomes, objectively again, is do we have any right as gamers to demand that content continuously to where we have access to those? I mean, at what point is the experience of a generation enough to keep something like that alive? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's a tough question.
Objectively, us as gamers, we have no right? We have no power over the companies to say we deserve to have these games. But these old games were part of the very first generations of the re-booming of video games, right? Yeah. Video games were dead before this. The Atari flopped, everything crashed down, video games were dead. Then they came back, and these are the two generations of video games that brought them back. So I think that should have enough power, enough historic power to say, maybe these are things that are worth caring about. If it was maybe the N64 or even the first, the PlayStation 2, at that point you're saying, this was a high point for video games, but this wasn't the creation of video games, and it's not the beginning point of video games. So maybe we don't need to have those around all the time. But when it goes back that far, I think it's something worth looking at.
Yeah, I agree. The only thing I'm asking is the question.
Yeah.
All right. let's move on here. We are not even going to get halfway through all of these topics. Topic
Not
number
even
4,
close.
50 minutes plus into the podcast. That's great. All right. Well, moving on here. Something that kind of maybe a little punch to the nose here from Nintendo and Xbox, but Fatti, what did they confirm? No surprise.
No, not surprised at all. Yeah, as soon as Sony gave E3 the big deuces, both Nintendo and Xbox confirmed on social media that they will be at E3, willing to share all their games and news with everyone, every boy and girl, every journalist, everyone. Xbox chief Phil Spencer jumped on Twitter, of course, to say that they would have a lot to share at the event, and Nintendo made literally a big ass news release about how E3 is an outstanding opportunity to share games and experiences with fans and business partners, and that they're looking forward to being at E3 2019.
Yeah, but Nintendo's E3 conferences are always shit, anyways.
Yeah, they're different. All the conferences are shit. They're all, like I said, they're all going to be videos. They're moving towards there. Xbox, like I explained earlier, is expected to talk about new hardware and some of the exclusives that we're hoping to see from them buying literally every fucking studio ever. While Nintendo is expected to release a few long sought after games such as Metroid Prime 4, a new Animal Crossing, and probably the yearly Pokemon we come to see from them. Other than that, I mean, there's not much about it. They're just being dicks. They're like, hey, Sony's gone, but we're still here. Come see us.
Yeah. Well, and like what we talked about in our extensive introductory topic here, how much does E3 benefit these companies anymore? Is it more economical and consumer friendly just to release videos on their website or on YouTube or however they choose? I don't know. I feel like I've come around now after this whole discussion to the idea of them just, shooting a tweet off or PlayStation.com updating with big news or whatever. It'll draw traffic. It'll be the buzz of the world and all that stuff. I think I've come around in the last hour to accepting that E3 is not really important anymore.
Yeah, I mean, and it's sad because E3 has been a huge thing for all gamers for quite a long time. I mean, my favorite thing as a teenager was waiting for E3 conferences.
Yeah.
But now, I mean, just give me a 2-hour-long video. Don't show me camera pans of people sitting in the audience. Don't set stuff up. I don't care. Just say, hey, tomorrow we're making an announcement, and then throw it on YouTube. I will still watch the shit out of that.
The only problem if E3 dies is Devolver Digital still going to put on the best fucking conference ever?
They will, because they're never fucking there anyways. It's all pre-recorded, and they win that shit every time.
I know.
Like, literally, every E3, they are top of the fucking show.
The last 2 years have been amazing.
Oh, it's been so good.
All right, so as we said, no surprises there. Of course, they've got to take a jab at Sony when they can, and whatever. it's E3. They'll be there. They'll do some lame-ass shows and announce some things, and it'll be the same as last year. All right, moving on here. Some moves being made by THQ, and some impressive ones at that. THQ Nordic has acquired Bugbear Entertainment and Coffee Stain Studios. Bugbear, known for a game that Panther and I both enjoy very much, Wreckfest. Also, they did the Flat Out series as well. So Bugbear's been around for a while, been successful. It's usually racing or card games. Coffee Stain Studios is the developer behind the games Satisfactory, also Goat Simulator, and Sanctum. So some notable releases from them as well. They've acquired 90% of the shares in Bugbear and 100% of the Coffee Stain holding and publishing. So making moves to acquire some stuff here. THQ's growing and leapfrogging off of that. The reason that they're acquiring some studios now and taking some strides here to expand their catalog and what they can do is because THQ Nordic's net sales are up 1,403%.
Damn.
Staggering. Yes, as far as growth. That's incredible. for the 3 months that ended in September, on September 30th, the publisher, THQ Nordic, reported net sales of 139.5 million, which, doesn't sound like much to the big boys, but $139 million, which is a staggering year-on-year increase of, like I said, 1,403% over the 9.3 million reported for the same period in 2017.
That's
so in 1 year, yeah, they've gone up from 9 million to 139 million. So in an incredible year of growth for THQ. I mean, just outstanding, staggering. The reason for this growth, according to this article, is THQ's acquisition of Koch Media and Deep Silver, which doubled their publishers' potential revenues. Excuse me. Titles in those two segments saw sales of 27.6 million in that 3-month period. And their own titles would have driven net sales up 47% year on year, even without those two developers. So they reissued Titan Quest and Red Faction Guerrilla. They supposedly got a lot of money from them as well. Also, This Is the Police 2. So it kind of breaks it down, in a lot of different ways in this article. You can peruse that at your leisure. We're running out of time, so I won't get any further into it. But lots of growth and some moves being made by THQ Nordic. I think they've always done a pretty good job. And actually, I think the Red Faction series was one of my oldest favorites. And I remember playing Red Faction on PS2, and man, the multiplayer was just fucking awesome on the old Red Faction. They kind of devolved, I think, with Red Faction 2, and then Guerrilla was good, but they've gone back and forth as far as quality. But THQ has always been around, and kind of cool to see a big resurgence in them.
Didn't THQ shut down the studio that made Red Faction? Wasn't it Volition?
Yeah, Volition did. As far as I can remember, I'm pretty sure they were one of the ones that did close. Yeah.
Yeah. Huh.
So comment on this I want to quickly make is, with them buying Bugbear with Wreckfest, I wonder if there's going to be some big updates to that down the road.
Hopefully some multiplayer server updates, god damn it.
And one thing I want to say is Coffee Stain is a neat name for a gaming studio. I don't know why, but I think that's an interesting name for a gaming studio.
What was it?
Coffee Stain. I think.
Oh, Coffee Stains. Yeah.
That's an interesting name for a studio. I don't know why, but I just find it interesting.
Yeah, it kind of makes me want to buy their games. I don't care if they're shit or not. I just want to say, oh yeah, this is a game by Coffee Studio.
Yep. And then we're running right out of time here, but the last article that I think we should get to here is another sad note as well, and it'll probably be the last time that we talk about them. But Panther, some final news here on Telltale Games. Why don't you tell us what that is to end off the podcast?
Telltale Games is closing, liquidation underway, and some games being removed from Steam. So this is a complete and final shutdown. The plug on the life support machine has been pulled. They've been double tapped in the back of the head with a .22 caliber pistol. They've been hung out to dry. They've been, dropped up shit creek without a paddle. The whole thing is over. I got no more euphemisms, but they are officially done. I mean, we knew it was coming. I mean, they basically bottomed out and were done in October. But I mean, yeah, they're the final straw has broke the camel's back. I don't know what else to say. But the one thing I found interesting is, and the same thing we had a quick conversation about in the chat, was that the games were being removed from Steam. And the only thing I can figure, and I don't know a lot about bankruptcies and how these things work, but I guess probably until someone takes over ownership or rights of the games, to basically try to recoup money or to try to continue on with a label or a name brand, that the money would go nowhere, because if no one owns the game of a bankrupt company, who would collect the money? So I'm figuring that's why they're pulling assets, is they'll sell them off and then the big games will possibly be reissued to Steam. I don't know. I mean, are they being pulled off the PlayStation Network as well?
No, it says games being removed from Steam.
And I mean, I went through the article like briefly, and I didn't see anything about what about other gaming platforms like
I don't know.
The Walking Dead series is on more than just PC. So
right, and even just being removed from Steam, if that's the case, that's so strange to me because I can't think of another example to where a publisher shuts down, because we see that all the time.
Right.
Studios close and everything like that. I can't think of another example to where somebody is shut down or gone out of business or declared bankruptcy, whatever the case may be, and then those games disappear.
Well, the only thing that is because Telltale was the developer and the publisher, right? They weren't like when EA buys up a company and closes them, they then own those properties, so the games would still be, would still have an owner. With the company being dissolved, like who owns that property now? Like that's
well,
the thing,
I'm sure that they shut down because debts to investors, right? That was the thing. So those investors, I would imagine, it would make sense to me that any further sales would go directly to those investors to recoup losses that they couldn't get paid back from Telltale Games.
Figure, but unless maybe they're pulling them and then they're going to try to sell them all off and then use that to recoup money. I have no idea. I don't know how the back end of these type of deals work, but I thought that was rather strange that they're pulling some of the games off Steam. That's just bizarre to me.
It is weird, but in any event, whatever the case may be, this is the final thing we'll probably talk about Telltale Games with. Like I said, sad day. Wasn't a huge fan of their games, but a lot of people were. Yep. And I could say that regardless of whether or not they were my thing, a lot of people really enjoyed the type of storytelling and interactive nature of their stories that they had. So.
Yeah, like I played a few of the
rip
games.
Telltale.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, they weren't like the top of my list, but I mean, I played a few of the games, and they were entertaining. But yeah, I mean, it's just sad that other than the gamers losing the games and the people losing their jobs, it's definitely kind of a sad note. But I mean, this is there's no last minute saving grace for Telltales.
Yep. All right, well, that's gonna do it. Of course, as usual, everything that we've talked about will be linked in the description of the YouTube video. Also, because Panther is a wizard in SoundCloud.
Hey, much wizardry, it's copy and paste, my pal. Don't make me sound better than I really am. Someone out there is gonna say that motherfucker just copy and paste and shit.
Yeah. Well, seniors can't remember their passwords, and you deal with that on a daily basis. So copy and paste is gonna look like a wonder to them. Anyways, so like we said, everything will be referenced in the description here. You can peruse those documents at your leisure. Once again, thank you guys so much for listening to us, supporting us here at Beyond the Controller, and we will see you guys next time.